Welcome
Welcome
to
to
Data
Data
Wars.
Wars. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Data Wars episode 3. Today, Ash and I are thrilled to have Taj Sarin with us. Taj is a lead AI consultant who has over a decade of experience in project management, AI development and consulting, data analysis, data strategy, and public speaking gigs as well. So, he has amazing skills around everything I can possibly want in my life to be. Some of his notable achievements include being a data analyst at NASA and an engineer at US Army. What a great resume, Taj. We are so glad to have you here.
Thank you, Prash, and thank you, Ash, for having me on. And thank you for the kind words as well.
Todd, it's great to have you here. Your background in AI and its application business is really impressive. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Sure. I grew up in the United States, but I was born in Canada. Family moved down to the States when I was 4 years old. Went to school, studied aerospace engineering for a year before dropping out and joining the U.S. military as an engineer. And from that point on, I went back to school, studied geology and astronomy, and that's when I really got involved with the data analysis portion of my career because it became a student researcher on a NASA space grant project. And that kind of led me to a job in the financial industry as a data analyst, where I worked with optical character recognition software, and we worked on reducing payment card processing costs for clients. And from that point on, and my career kind of just went straight into data analysis. It kind of grew into AI and what it is today.
I see. Taj, I think that's a great intro. So I love talking about how we can bridge the technology and business gap, and I feel like you have plenty of experience there. You literally have spent over a decade bridging the gap
I know.
between the groundbreaking technologies like AI, cloud, etc., and also the practical business solutions, right? So, can you share some examples of how you have successfully translated all this scientific research into market-ready AI innovations?
Yeah. Yep, Rosh. You know what? It doesn't feel like a decade. It feels like it did only yesterday.
Yesterday.
When you say it's a
I know.
decade, I feel I feel
No, I
extremely.
didn't mean to say you're too old.
No, fair enough. Look, you know, bridging technology and business has always been a challenge just for almost, well,
Mhm.
as long as I can remember. I think from the
Yeah.
dawn of mankind, even just being able to take science and break it down into layman's terms and translating it across multiple different business practices and business acumen. Some of the things that I've worked on specifically, I don't want to get into too many details. Some of the projects are still under NDA on, but I can talk a little bit broadly about some of the research that is being currently developed and worked on. There's a lot of work in, well, nowadays you're seeing a lot of, I should say, almost every aspect of scientific research today has some level of machine learning or AI component that is
Yeah.
involved. In specifically a lot of the stuff that I've done work on, there's a PVI indexing tool, which is a
Hmm.
platelet variability index, which measures blood platelet counts within your blood, and it,
No.
it, it uses a machine learning algorithm to actually create a score-based system on the amount of platelets that are in a specific cell cluster, which is being used to really translate across multiple different clinical studies for pharmaceutical companies.
Wow.
We have, there's also one project that I've seen firsthand in regards to 3D bioprinting, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's like stuff out of Star Trek, where they're
Wow.
literally printing tissue. So 3D printing biotissue. And those are more of an engineering aspect of it, but there is an AI component involved there because they are running simulations on which biochemical materials are reacting to specific environments on computers. And they use AI and machine learning to run those simulations and predictive analysis rather than just building or creating a new material or a new compound and testing it in clinical trials. They're running virtual clinical trials or virtual simulations on these machine learning algorithms.
Wow. That sounds fascinating. You have so much on ground experience, Taj. What also caught my attention was you went to school for astronomy. Just the diversity of experience and the knowledge you've kind of gained through all these years. It's fascinating. Like, there's so many questions in my head right now. The biggest thing, the most practical one, which is coming in, first in my mind is you've been involved with a lot of these projects on the ground with the clients. What are some of the biggest challenges you've seen companies face when they're trying to implement these groundbreaking technologies, specifically, you know, AI has been on the forefront of a lot of this. How have you seen them sort of adapt this and overcome this to kind of bring the entire culture to slowly kind of get to adapt this new technology?
Right. The biggest challenge is exactly what you said, adapting the technology itself. I think in any
Mhm.
circumstances when a new technology comes out, or a new market changer or market breaker, or a new innovation comes out, one of the biggest challenges is change management and being able to actually change your business or pivot your business to actually accommodate for this new technology or this new product that can revolutionize your industry. And your competition is leveraging it too, so you need to move fast. So falling back on that, so the biggest challenge is really, and especially in terms of AI, is leveraging your in-house data.
Hmm.
uh, and that what I mean by that is data that your product that you have in your business is actively collecting, or you may or may not be collecting it currently, and then
Yeah.
you're realizing, like, oh no, I need to start collecting data. A lot of people don't realize this, but as soon as you start collecting data and you create a proprietary, a data set, that becomes your company's property essentially, and you can leverage that and license that data out, and build products, AI products on top of that. So back to what I was saying, biggest challenge is certainly leveraging and realizing that data in the first place. And how do you overcome positioning your business to really take advantage of this data? And the first thing you should have in mind is to build a product that's data first.
Hmm.
And have that in mind. Don't build an AI product without having data in mind. You don't build a skyscraper from the top down. You build
Yeah.
the skyscraper from the foundation, and you build it up. And the foundation in this sense is the data. So build a product that data first, and then start considering where AI fits into that product.
I'm literally smiling right now because this is what me and Prash have spent our entire lives doing. We have been educating people on how to organize your data and how important it is to just get your foundations right, with data management and data governance. And, instead of chasing the next shiny object, you got to start with the basics, garbage in, garbage out,
Right.
right? So,
If I can add just real quickly, one of the other pieces, and I'm sure Ash, you might be very familiar with this too. A very important piece to have in a business is a business glossary
hmm,
and data governance protocols as well. So business glossaries are super important because it comes down to the language that's used internally in your corporation. Return on investment in one business might mean something completely different in another business.
I love that because, we have spent, and I can remember countless meetings trying to convince stakeholders about the importance of business glossary. It sounds so basic. Like what? Defining our elements? We already know that, but it's crazy how when you go from marketing to sales to customer service, how one simple term could mean different things to different individuals. And a simple investment in that pays, much higher dividends, I think, down the road when everybody has clarity of what this data means, how
Right.
should that be used, who's the owner of that, and no, I love it that you're mentioning that.
100%.
That's a great discussion. I think when you talk about data and the importance of data to drive better outcomes through AI, it comes back to the basic foundational discussions me and Ash have been having in this podcast. One other thing which is taken a lot of attention these days is RAG, right? Retrieval augmented generation. The concept of like how do you make recommendations through chat gpt and other tools, but also create trust around that recommendation by having a source that actually provides that trust. I think
Mhm.
that's the kind of world we are moving into, where it's not just about increasing productivity by using chat gpt and other tools, but actually making sure that insights you get from that tools is something you can really trust, right? I think that's where all these technologies are coming into play. One thing I observed as I was going through your LinkedIn profile, which is by very, very, very impressive LinkedIn profile you got there, you had quite a bit of focus on health tech arena, and it caught my attention for sure, particularly with licensing deals in pharmaceutical giants, etc. So can you tell us a little bit about that experience and how the impact of AI also is applied in health tech?
Sure.
That would be an interesting topic for us.
Yeah, no problem, Rosh. And it certainly is going to be a significant impact. It's been around, obviously, as you know, AI has been around for quite some time, but what we're seeing now in regards to the impact it's having specifically on just health tech is phenomenal. It's game changing. In some senses, it's scary as hell. It's funny because my dad used to tell me, your generation is going to live far longer. You're going to reach a life expectancy vertical, meaning that you're going to hit exit velocity. What that means is that you'll live in a time period where human life expectancy in technology will become so advanced that for every year that you grow older, you increase a year of your lifespan. And what that essentially means is, well, it's an exit velocity. You could quite literally live to a point where, who knows, we're 100, 200 years old, who knows down the road. So back to where AI is leading us in health tech. One of the cool tools that I've seen firsthand is a specific tool that uses a multimodal AI system from a webcam. So there's this proprietary machine learning algorithm on the back end, and the webcam will look at your face and measure blood flow in your face and temperature just from those
Wow.
specific
Mm.
just from those specific data points. It's able to provide statistical analyses and provide a diagnostic tool to doctors.
Mhm.
So what this thing does is, it's quite literally like a face ID,
Hmm.
but you sit there for 5 minutes looking at the webcam, and the webcam is analyzing your blood flow in your face, your temperature variations, blood pressure variation, things like that. And then it's able to use its historical database or its learned data to actually provide insight on. And you got to be very careful these days. We're not providing an actual diagnosis. We're
Hmm.
providing a tool
Mhm.
that assists doctors, surgeons, etc., to diagnose. So what it's essentially doing is providing more data, more assistance for a healthcare practitioner to provide a much more accurate diagnosis. And it's super
Mhm.
powerful.
So this thing doesn't have any sensors, Taj. It's just a camera.
Yep.
Wow.
So that's the crazy thing is like we're moving into a time where we've had physical sensors, right? But those physical sensors we've collected plethoras of data and information on that we can now create statistical predictions based on historical data that's been
Hmm.
collected over time.
It's amazing.
Another tool that's been in the very similar sense, you're probably heard about these types of algorithms that are used for MRI scans to
Mhm.
detect breast cancer before it even metastasizes or even becomes an issue. It's able to actually predict specific cell cultures in your tissue that could be cancerous. And you can tackle issues in those sites before they become an issue. That's happening today. That's not 5 years from now. That's today. That's happening.
Mm.
Wow. That is fascinating. You know so much more about what's going on in the industry based on the things you have seen. Even if I was to Google it, to be honest, I don't think I'll be finding this sort of information. So this is really fascinating to me. What are your predictions for the future of the healthcare industry in the next 5 years based on what you have seen? Where do you see things in the next 5 years?
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting time. And look, we're seeing it today. We're seeing it change significantly. We're seeing the realization that patient data is super valuable. It's valued in its own weight in gold, essentially. And we're going to see patient data being leveraged more so. We're going to see more requests for your data to be used right on these applications, on these healthcare applications. Um, we're going to see a lot of maybe even pushback too from an ethics standpoint of like, hey, who owns the data really? Like, our government has most of our health data. Some private industry has data. How are they leveraging it? How are they licensing it out? You may or may not know, but I remember when ancestry.com came out and they were collecting DNA and
Mhm.
providing you with, this whole plethora of your family tree, where you came from, awesome stuff, cool tech. But my biggest concern at that point, not everyone had this concern. That's fair. It was like, okay, wait, they have your DNA. What are they going to do with it?
Mhm.
And they had this giant promise on their, in their company that, hey, we're not going to be selling your data. We're not going to be getting rid of your data, or we're not going to be doing this. Well, they just recently got purchased and bought out. So I don't know which company, and I'm not going to name the company, but yeah, they got bought out, and this new company is now the owners of all the historical DNA data, and that's kind of scary. That's kind of wild. To go furthermore into, I guess, a lot of the positives and negatives here.
Yeah.
AI
Mhm.
is being used now. So there was a recent research team that used AI algorithms to create multiple non-toxic biochemical pharmaceutical drugs, right? And they had all this trained data on what molecular compounds are non-toxic in the human body. So it was able to create all these different new materials, all these new compounds that could be tested.
Mhm.
Well, this research group was kind of curious all of a sudden. Okay, wait, we have this proprietary algorithm that produces non-toxic molecular compounds. What if we just changed the 0 to a 1 and made the non-toxic toxic chemicals?
Mhm.
They were able to create an entire library of toxic nerve agents from just this AI modeling simulation that they created that had never been discovered before. And they had this, kind of like this oh crap moment where like they just created new biochemical weapons essentially. So it's kind of scary in that sense that there are a lot of weaponization aspects to this too from a healthcare standpoint. um,
Mhm.
I like to equate the AI revolution or the technology itself akin to discovering the nuclear bomb, because we've discovered, we have nuclear weapons are obviously bad, but nuclear power can power entire communities and cities. So there's for every negative, there's a positive, and vice versa. So I think you're going to see a lot of back and forth here, a lot of benefits coming out of it, and a lot of negative things coming out of it too.
Yeah, the nuclear bomb thing is a bit scary, but I get excited when you talk about health tech and how we can make a real difference in people's lives by saving them from diseases like cancer, right? If a AI tool can help us detect early signs of diseases like cancer and potentially saving countless of lives, and it's a personal touch to me too, because it's very personal to me because I lost my mom 5 years ago. It's a bit too much information for this podcast, but I wish AI was available and was at a level now or in the future. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when I lost my mom, it's amazing things we can do with AI. Um, Taj, I want to talk a little bit about the AI driven products. You have overseen some of these developments. It always fascinates me how a concept goes from being a concept to a realization when it comes to building these AI products. Love to hear your point of view on that. What goes into these kind of initiatives that happen?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, Prash. And first and foremost, I'm sorry to hear about your loss. And, um, I fully believe
Thank you.
that AI will certainly get to a point where we don't even have to diagnose or image. We'll be able to prevent completely and cure it
Mhm.
completely. Because I think, having the DNA
Hmm.
systems, and we'll be able to actually literally completely avoid it. But that being said, onto the your next question here. My first step in this type of thing, when, like, for example, I get a client that says, hey, we want AI, what do we do? Well, the first thing I do is kind of throw myself into their business. I become enthralled into it. I become more familiarized with their business than they do. It's my goal to become more familiarized with their business. I want to understand their product. I want to understand who their product is being sold to, or what goes into the product itself, who the competitors are. I essentially do what's called red selling. It's a military term. And in the military, red selling is when you put yourself into the shoes of opposition forces, or your own shoes, essentially, to kind of go through what an environment, what a specific scenario might be. And once you put yourself in those shoes and understand the product and understand their business, you ask you start identifying the problems that you see, and they might even already have okay, this is a problem, this is a problem. But if you're an outside observer coming in, you want to ask yourself, is it really a problem? How do you know if it's a problem? It's a problem in their eyes because who knows? Like they're so used to being siloed in their business operations that they may consider a problem. And then me coming in from an outside point of view
Mm,
and doing research on all the other competitors and seeing if they have similar problems, realizing
Mhm.
that wait, hold on, they don't. It's not necessarily a problem.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of like the first thing I do. And the other thing I do a lot of research on is anyone else already solving this problem outside of their industry.
Mm,
Because
Mhm.
like I said, people are siloed in this business mindset. They're focused, and there's nothing wrong with that. But one of the drawbacks with that is you become so narrowly focused and only see what occurs in your industry. And there could be similar problems occurring outside of those industries in other industries, and they've already solved that years ago. So you kind of want to be able to take the bird's eye view and look at what's occurring around you and see if the solutions are there.
that's you're so right. I think to what you mentioned, that everybody's working in silos, which makes it a bit harder just because everybody wants to get sort of ahead in the race as well. Um, how have you seen you know different companies trying to maximize the business impact of these AI solutions? Like when you were in there as a consultant, is this thought up ground up from a business problem perspective and then AI is introduced, or do you see a lot of clients saying this technology is cool, let's do something with it, and we will see the business impact of this?
Yeah, sure. Look, business impact is all relative, right? One of the first things I would do essentially, or I would suggest that anyone do, is create a baseline of where you're coming from. Because if you have a
Mhm.
baseline of like, okay, here's where we are currently, and then we introduce a new product and you test the product in the market in your business, and now you have a measured response, you have a measured impact. You can't measure impact if you don't have a starting point. So it really just depends on the problem itself, the tool that is actually solving or alleviating, in your business, what's occurring there. But one of the most important things and key things to ensure significant impact, is maintaining continuous data collection and data cleanliness as well.
Hmm,
Yeah. I think that's a very interesting
I think so too,
point
yeah.
of view. Taj, so the other thing I was really curious about as I was looking, and we were having chat earlier, is this whole app aspect of workflow optimization,
Mm,
right? I've worked with many executives. I get a chance to talk to them, and often when it comes to data related efficiency gains, productivity gains, and how effectively they can run business operations and streamline tasks, there's a big aspect of that is the optimizing the workflows,
sure.
like the business process workflows, right? So
Hmm,
I have seen many companies here play when it comes to AI and how do you boost productivity of those workflows through AI. And it seems like you also have some passion around that topic, just like so many other passions you have. It's amazing how many things you're touched. So can you provide some insights into how AI can actually help optimize some of these business workflows?
Yeah. I like to use a river analogy when it comes to like workflow optimization.
hmm,
There's a start of the river, and then there's the end of the river where the river flows into, and I consider that the workflow or a specific piece of a workflow out of a giant operation. And the river can branch off into smaller different things and have dependencies and things like that, and then you start to identify single points of failure and issues essentially, but you have something to work off of or something to optimize essentially. And it's easy to say like, oh, AI can optimize this or AI can optimize that. It's only going to be good at optimizing that workflow if it can be applied and if there's data to back it up. It needs to be trained on how that workflow works, and through that it'll be able to determine perhaps that maybe there's a path of least resistance that this river can go down actually.
hmm. That's a great point. I think I've seen a lot of this driven initially by the RPA stuff when the workflows had to be automated, and then now with the advent of AI, a lot of thought is going into how can we call those APIs and feed into this workflow automation. Um, you know, the experience that you've had, you spoke about AI in healthcare, how clients are building these products from ground up and how important the data governance and the glossary is. Do you see a lot of these companies building their own large language models and having a big machine learning practice, or go to most of the cloud providers which actually have this technology they're building, and kind of, instead of building the infrastructure, use that infrastructure, right? So I want to talk a bit about how do clients go about setting these things up. Are they kind of building their own large language models and machine learning teams? What are your thoughts on that? How can somebody get started?
Yeah, it comes down to really just the executive decision making at that point. Like, do you want to go with an existing product or an existing algorithm or a third party solution, or do you want to build something completely in house?
Hmm.
It's it's easier said than done to build something completely in house,
Of course.
but you maintain your IP, you maintain ownership of the data.
Yeah.
If you're going with a third party solution, you any data that might be collected ongoing with that product or solution, you have to look into the black and white terms and conditions of
Right.
how you can leverage that data in the future.
Yeah.
If you can't, then I don't see the real value in it. You're probably just putting a band-aid on your
Mm.
ship that may have a hole in it. So yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Good point. I just wanted to say that a lot of the basic AI workflow optimization stuff doesn't really need investment in large language models.
Right.
It's really when they are leaning more towards generative AI, is when they start looking into these large language models.
Sure. Yeah.
So when you were kind of approached by a client, have you helped people set up large language models?
I personally have not, but I have
Okay.
teams that do. So I have access to some pretty. I like to call them tier one developers because they're like the retirees of the retirees. They've been around the block, so to speak, and they kind of do this for fun.
Yeah,
And they're experts within server mainframes and everything technical, things that I'm not necessarily capable of. See, where I come in is kind of bridging that gap between business and technical speak,
makes
and
sense.
and understanding that and managing
So
that.
outside of the big chat GPTs and the other leading, the Meta has its own
Yeah.
flavor, the Llama model. Have you seen real benefits which companies have had with large language
Oh
models
yeah.
in export? Okay,
I mean, everyone has it. You look at Amazon.
yeah.
Um, Amazon's a logistical giant. They've been leveraging logistical machine learning algorithms for quite some time, even before GPT.
Hmm.
Uh, a perfect example is they've been able to create algorithms that can predict seasonal supply and demand. One of the biggest problems that we have today is over manufacturing. We're overproducing products, and consumers not necessarily. A lot of it goes to waste. Like how? What do you? It goes ends up in landfills, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so how do you protect against that? You create machine learning algorithms that can predict buyers or can predict demand and can then, based on the demand, produce and supply the product that is quite necessary or optimal for that demand, and not necessarily overproducing that supply, which would then go to waste. So there, and furthermore, you could add that to a smart grid that'll then produce, they'll be able to actually predict when manufacturing needs to start at low peak energy seasons, right? And look, we can quantify this even further and further, and you'll literally create cost savings, significant cost savings. And Amazon has done a lot of that too.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
very cool.
that's a great point, Ash. I think there's a very good conversation on LLMs. I wish we could go on that and
I
talk
know.
more, but I'm curious about you know Taj, you are a quite recognized AI expert and frequently consult with investors and on the market trends and speak to many people. So I'm curious, like, when I look at the market trends today in AI, for me the Gen AI stands out, obviously, for obvious reasons. It's been there for the last 2 years, but I also see many new things that are coming our way, from edge computing to quantum AI to AI in manufacturing and industrial robotics, right? Things what countries like China can do by adopting robotics in their manufacturing processes and the kind
Correct.
of efficiencies we can drive through that. So I'm curious what current trends that you are seeing, and maybe help us contextualize that a little bit, because from a business point of view, the guys who are running the business and investing in AI, what are the things that trends that they need to be aware of and how they can best make use of those?
Yeah, no. Well, first of all, thank you for. I'm flattered you called me an AI expert. I
You
don't know.
are for me.
I think you are
That's
hands
why we
down.
have you here.
Well, that's good. But I kind of, I always, no, I thank you, but it's always funny because you call someone just an expert. Always, it's the max, like the top that you could be, essentially, in my mind. I think. Like, wait, there's always something new coming out. There's always something
You're
more to
too
learn.
humble, Taj.
Right? No, no. Well, thank you. No, I appreciate it. But look, just to your question, I think what businesses should be paying attention to, and like you're saying, Gen AI is just the tip of the iceberg here. It's not,
Hmm.
it's really small and minuscule compared to what is around the corner and what's currently being put forth. I mean, look at Figure One is about to announce something in the next few days in terms of robotics. The robotics technology is advanced so much to a point where it's scary. Like we're in our lifetime, we're gonna see these robots. We're
I
gonna
know
the movies we watched 10 years ago about iRobot, that is happening
that is
today.
happening.
So
Yeah.
Scary.
yeah, it's wild. Multimodal integrations is what we're really going to have to look at. And what I mean by that is, like I said, it's not just textual based learning machines. It's visual, it's audio, it's every modal that's available currently, every
Wow.
sense that's available to humanity.
You already touched base on that. My mind was just going there. So looking ahead, like, what do you envision as the next big breakthrough in AI, and how can businesses prepare themselves for all of this stuff coming ahead? Because, how do we take advantage of
Yeah.
this future AI landscape?
Yeah, look, I mean, look at what goes into this type of technology. It doesn't just appear out of thin air. There's data, and what is that data? Look, this podcast is called Data Wars, right? So
Yeah,
it's pretty interesting because, like, we used to, well, we still fight wars over oil, right, over natural resources. So in the future, maybe we are fighting actual literal wars over data, right, or over
absolutely.
specific databases and ownership of that. So that's something to consider. Look, chip manufacturers, if you want to talk about geopolitics, you can look at Taiwan's the number one chip manufacturing country in the entire world, and
Yeah,
there's a lot of, depending on who you ask, right? There's a lot of geopolitics involved with China and Taiwan there, so that's a huge game piece on the board to consider. And you got to look at energy demands too. Like you need electricity to run these data centers for these AI machines. Where's that going to come out of? You need resources. You need hard resources. And kind of if you look down that path and
hmm
see where the demand is going to be, you can really position your business in a place where it's supplying and fulfilling that demand.
no, that's a great point. Well, I asked about businesses, and you just went over different verticals, blowing everybody's mind. No, this is fantastic, Taj. Um, I think for businesses who are looking forward to understanding the next AI landscape, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, Taj Sarin. I have a podcast, Tachyon Talks. That's
Hmm,
TACHYONTALKS, Tachyon Talks. Tachyon's a theoretical particle that travels faster than light, but I won't get into that. Bit of a nerd here. Yeah, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I have my consulting company, TempestInnovation.com. And I really think in the future we're going to have futurists on corporate teams that really kind of look into the future and see where that supply and demand is. I think you're going to have like chief futurist officer or chief AI officers. I think that's going to be very critical for companies moving forward. But yeah, if you have any questions or if you want to reach out to me and get some more insight, feel free to reach out to me.
that sounds great, Taj. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Your insights are invaluable.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much. I appreciate you having me and taking the time.
Yeah, thank you, Taj. This has been really, really great. I absolutely love the insight I got here. So, for those of you who joined us, thank you, everyone. Stay tuned for more episodes of Data Wars, where we continue to explore the frontiers of digital innovation. So, until next time, goodbye. And Taj, again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Taj. Thanks, everyone.